Hey guys, let's get more news about Dallas, but first, don't forget to subscribe and leave your like. Cowboys news, plenty of hope for Cooper Beebe as the starting center. Replacing Tyron Smith with first-round pick Tyler Guyton was the headline for the Cowboys in the draft, but they deserve credit for potentially finding a new starting center in Cooper Beebe too. What's next? Despite his lack of game reps in college, the Cowboys are going to try him at center, likely battling both Brock Hoffman and maybe TJ Bass. The Cowboys have some young prospects at center that should make for a fun competition at training camp and maybe even into the season. The lack of game reps at center could be an issue, but then again, players like Zach Martin have moved from tackle to guard without any real reps and made a seamless transition. Not that Beebe deserves any comparisons to Martin right away, but many teams, including the Cowboys, projected Beebe to eventually move to center. That could be happening sooner than later if he can win the job. Did you know, while Beebe earned a pair of All-Big 12 selections as a player, he was a four-time All-Big 12 first-team pick on the academic side. Quotable, he has the flexibility and versatility, but we want him to focus on the center position. Great job by our draft department. You see his initial quickness and his ability to sustain the blocks, and the type of competitor he is. He's a smart football player and he's another guy that has versatility, but we want him to lock into the center spot. O-line coach Mike Solari on Beebe's position flex. Is now the time for the Cowboys to sell high on backup QB Trey Lance? QB Trey Lance. If the Cowboys are looking to cash in on draft pedigree, backup quarterback Trey Lance is the perfect trade candidate. The 2021 third overall selection has shown little at the pro level with Dallas and the San Francisco 49ers, the team that traded up to get him, but former first-round picks do tend to generate interest. Lance isn't likely to play a significant role behind Prescott and number 2 QB Cooper Rush in 2024, and he's set to be a free agent next offseason. Therefore, he could be viewed as expendable if the right offer comes along. The right offer would probably require an injury to another team's starter before the start of the regular season, of course. However, given the litany of QB injuries we saw last season, that's entirely possible. The big question here is whether the Cowboys believe they can develop Lance themselves and keep him as insurance in 2025, when Prescott could depart for another franchise. According to NFL Media's Bucky Brooks, Dallas has thrown around the idea of Lance being a long-term successor to Prescott. If the Cowboys don't trust Lance in that role or manage to lock up Prescott in the coming weeks, however, moving Lance could potentially help them strengthen another position via a trade. The list of players and coaches with a ton of pressure on them this season is long, but it always starts and ends with QB Dak Prescott. It's the playoffs, baby, like it or not, and the Dak pack clearly doesn't. It comes down to the playoffs, especially for the quarterbacks. You can light up the league all year, but if you don't get it done in the playoffs, who cares? And neither Romo nor Prescott have gotten it done when it matters. Romo ended his career 2-4 in the postseason. He was 0-4 in the divisional round and never even sniffed a conference title game or a Super Bowl. Prescott is 2-5 and is 0-3 in the divisional round. He too hasn't played for a championship of any kind. Dallas Cowboys, former rival wide receiver calls out locker room culture amidst Micah Parsons beef. The Dallas Cowboys have been in the headlines a great deal this offseason, though not for what one might call the right reasons. To be fair, at least they have not had the legal issues that several Kansas City Chiefs players have had, but the discussions surrounding them have been far from positive. CeeDee Lamb is holding out for a new contract, and Dak Prescott's contract negotiations have not really gone anywhere either. The uncertainty surrounding two of their superstars has surely put a cloud over the organization. Dallas simply has to go on a deep run in the NFL playoffs in order for the franchise to avoid a rebuild. Mike McCarthy certainly needs one if he is going to remain head coach beyond this year. In other words, the Cowboys cannot afford any distractions. Unfortunately, a recent public beef between All-Pro linebacker Micah Parsons and safety Malik Hooker has, once again, distracted from what should be the team's ultimate goal, winning a Super Bowl. My advice for Micah would be just make sure we're alright and being where your feet are. Because if we're at work and, the run game's terrible, but you're doing a podcast every week and the run game is terrible, then what are you really caring about? Are you caring about the crowd that was watching the podcast, or are you caring about the success of our team and the Super Bowl that we're trying to reach? After seeing the clip on social media, Parsons posted on X, formerly Twitter, "Just wish you said this to me but instead on some podcast. And you got my number, family. At Malik Hooker 24 and you my locker mate. So you coulda said this any day. And you do realize I shoot the podcast on our off day. Why ain't we talking about everyone preparations and focus?" It is rather ironic that Hooker was criticizing Parsons for having a podcast while he was on actual podcast himself. Parsons, too, has a right to be upset due to the fact that this is the kind of opinion that should have brought to him face to face. This public disagreement has drawn many comments from fans, and some criticism towards the team for the culture they have created. During his show up on Game, former New York Giants wide receiver Plaxico Burress had the following to say in regard to the Parsons-Hooker beef: "This would never happen in the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room. These things would never happen because everyone is their own leader. If you've got a problem with somebody, it's gonna get addressed. This is how we governed our football team. You got a problem with somebody, whatever they're doing, if they ain't out there giving effort that you think they should be playing with, we address you to your face like a grown man in Pittsburgh. That's the difference between playing in a locker room with the Pittsburgh Steelers and New York Giants versus the Dallas Cowboys." One does wonder, though, if Burress' former teammates said anything to him man-to-man when he missed 2 whole seasons due to suspension for violating the NFL's personal conduct policy. New detail emerges about Ceedee Lamb's contract holdout. Ceedee Lamb is hoping to become the next wide receiver to cash in with a huge contract extension this offseason, and it may be a while before he shows up to work if he does not get it. Lamb has skipped all workouts with the Dallas Cowboys this offseason, including mandatory minicamp last month. According to Calvin Watkins of the Dallas Morning News, Lamb is not expected to attend training camp in a few weeks without a new deal in place either. The Cowboys will hold their first official training camp practice on July 25. That gives Lamb and the team nearly a full month to negotiate a long-term deal, but there has been no indication that the two sides are moving toward an agreement. Lamb is set to make roughly $18 million in the final year of his rookie contract this season. He had an NFL-leading 135 receptions last season to go along with 1,749 receiving yards and 12 touchdowns, so he can certainly make the case that he deserves to be one of the highest-paid players in the NFL. Justin Jefferson signed a record contract extension with the Minnesota Vikings earlier this offseason. There have been reports that Lamb was waiting for that deal to reset the market, which would make sense. Lamb might not get as much as Jefferson, but he undoubtedly wants to take advantage of a wide receiver market that has gone crazy this offseason. Paying the fines for skipping training camp might be worthwhile for him if it helps turn up the pressure on the Cowboys. And you, fan? What do you think of the situation of Ceedee Lamb? Leave your opinion in the comments.